Hello and welcome to the Old Bob Show, produced and directed here at Vernon Communications in Westby. Westby is located in the beautiful western Wisconsin area of coulees and valleys and ridges. And we're happy to bring to you now the Old Bob Show, and here is your host, Bob Burrow. Hello again on the Old Bob Show, and we're back for a second week with Craig Buros and with David Maxwell, both duly employed leaders of the Vernon Electric Company here that does such a wonderful, grand job of furnishing all of us with electricity. That is lights and machines at work and so forth. Electricity is one huge element in our way of living, and all of us know that because if suddenly we lose our electricity, there we are. And if you're a milker, well, you got to hook up the tractor and get to milk your cows. And if you're in the house, you need to light candles. But fortunately, because of good old American enterprise and good hard work and good minds, and the spirit of entrepreneurship, as well as the spirit of serving, that's a really important part of all of us, I think, is to know that when we do something, we want to be enthusiastic about it, and we want to, really like what we do. And Craig Buros and Dave Maxwell, you've got two gentlemen here who help all of us here in Vernon County with our electrical needs. Thanks again for coming back the second time.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it so
Thanks,
much.
Bob.
You bet. Dave Maxwell, Director of Marketing, and Craig Buros, Director of Engineering. Now, last time we were together, we kind of went over several different elements of electricity and where we get the energy and that sort of thing. But this time we're going to be a little bit more, how should I say, exploring, so that you get a good idea of the enormity of the service that we receive in our individual homes. And so I'm going back once more again to ask, where does energy come? Now, we know energy comes from God. It's that sun up there that does all things, and it's like a minister came out to a farmer one day and said, he said, your fields look so good. God has been so good to you. And the farmer said, yes, I know, but you should have seen it when only God had it. And that's exactly what we are talking about with all the gifts that we've been given. And would you explain once more, Craig, again, where we get our energy?
Our energy comes from a number of different sources, and as of lately, we're finding with renewables that are becoming very, very popular that more of our energy is coming from renewables. Vernon Electric is 1/25th owner of Dairyland Power. Dairyland Power is a generation and transmission company. They generate energy, sell that energy into a market called MISO, Midwest Independent System Operator. That grid goes clear from Louisiana to up into Canada in the central part of the United States.
Wow, imagine that. Imagine that. And so when you think about that incredible grid that's being fed by the half a nation, so to speak, or maybe a whole nation, connected, it makes Vernon Electric and Dairyland kind of small little things, but like that one single employee working out in the field to keep your service going, Vernon Electric, Dairyland, et cetera, are for us the most important. Now, you talk about renewable, and David, you talked about that earlier too. You might explain one more time about the motivation for renewable energy. In other words, not coal-produced energy through coal, but through sunlight and wind, et cetera, right?
Yeah, so Dairyland Power is less and less of their resources is becoming coal. So they're moving more into the renewable energy market, hydroelectric, wind energy, big wind farms, mostly down in southern Minnesota, moving into solar photovoltaics now. There's landfill to gas projects, manure digester projects, and all that stuff coming together. And 12% of all the energy that Dairyland produces is now coming from strictly renewable energy sources.
Now, I have to ask you a question here, because you read about it a lot, that by getting away from coal and going to these renewable sources, we're actually becoming less efficient but less economical. Is that correct or not?
There's a few different philosophies out there.
Yeah.
No one that's absolutely correct. There's no doubt that our coal-fired plants that have been in place for a number of years are probably still one of the most economical means of generating energy. Just because the facility is there, we have the infrastructure. We're still paying for that infrastructure that's in there. However, when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, those renewables are great. And we really need a mix of all of those, because there isn't one that really stands out. We can't just go to solar, because when the sun isn't shining, we still want to use electricity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you treat that, David Maxwell, as a marketing and communication?
Yeah, well, and to expand on that a little bit further, it just reminds me of one day we came into the office and I was looking out the window. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we have this big American flag sitting out in our parking lot out there, and that flag was just hanging there still, not moving. And it was foggy out, the sun wasn't shining, and I was thinking, you know, we have a pretty high demand for electricity right now. The farmers are out there doing their chores, the kids are out there getting ready for school, the parents are out there getting ready for work, and everybody's using hot water, they're cooking, the lights are on, and the farm equipment's running, the milker pumps are running, the vacuum pumps are running, and we're using a lot of energy right now, but the wind is not blowing, the sun is not shining, and that demand for electricity has to be met somewhere. And really that resource right now that can meet that demand is those base load power plants, which is a lot of times coal or gas. But we're slowly moving in. Well, I shouldn't even say slowly. Solar renewable energy is growing quicker than just about anything right now.
That's so interesting. I think a lot of people probably are also aware that solar and wind doesn't pollute the air, and which is one of the great complaints about coal. Even though there's been a lot of money spent on cleansers and everything else to keep a clean air coal operating plant. But now, taking on what you just said, David, expand that out again to this incredible network that Craig has talked about. And when we talk about that, and we also have this issue about high transmission lines, electric transmission lines. That's a challenge for both of you. You as far as marketing and informing and explaining, and you as far as integrating all of this back here into Vernon Electric. Now, what's the controversy that's been going on here lately? The Badger
Coulee line?
The Badger Coulee line, yeah.
That, to a certain extent, that doesn't directly influence, or Vernon Electric really has not a lot of influence over what happens with that line. Yeah. As I had mentioned, we do get our power from Dairyland. It sells into this grid. Then they have to purchase it back out. And they send the power through the transmission grid to our substations. Where Vernon Electric has 17 substations throughout our service territory. It's at that point that Vernon Electric takes over. We purchase our power then from Dairyland at that point. We distribute it to the metering point for the member. Where they take it over. The high voltage transmission lines, though, as we talk about this huge grid and talk about different means of generating energy, we need a way of transporting that across the country.
That's right. Well, and it's huge. If you want to get a profile of that, when we drive into Madison, Wisconsin, that high transmission line down there has just been completed. I mean, it's huge. I mean, it occupies your vision as you go along, because it's up there and it's big. And it, for me, I'm thinking, wow, that's vulnerable. On the other hand, we need it now to continue our services. How are we doing on this on the Badger? What's the rationale?
The Public Service Commission of the state of Wisconsin has decided on a route that that line will take. I know at one time there was talk that it would follow the northern part of Vernon County.
Right.
They decided that was not the best route, and chosen the northern route, which they call it, which will mainly follow the interstate from up in the Holman La Crosse area to Madison. So that's it won't be in our area, but it was needed. Their transmission studies showed that it was needed for power flow. I guess if you look at the current power flow across the state, depending on which generators are running, and depending on if the sun is shining or the wind is blowing, those wind farms out in Minnesota, if they're producing all kinds of energy, they need to be able to transport that.
You bet.
And one area that was a problem or congestion was in the La Crosse, Rochester, in this area. And the idea is that our energy actually costs more because of the transmission congestion in this area. So in theory, the Badger Coulee line should help the flow of energy across the market, MISO market, and hopefully in the end, we'll see some savings with that.
Well, that's the whole point, of course, for all of this is there is a demand for so many different things, and if I'm going to have electricity to run all of my toys, then I need more electricity, and so the public, by and large, demands it. There's an element that says, well, we don't need it, but actually, if it wasn't needed, I'm sure it wouldn't be built.
And to bring up one more point to that, Bob, in that, I don't know if you've ever been out to North Dakota or South Dakota or Northeast Iowa. There are wind turbines out there as far as you can see. It's like somebody planted a bunch of wind turbines, and there's just literally thousands and thousands of them out there. And there's really not a lot of people in North Dakota. And there's getting to be more with the shale fracking out there.
Exactly.
But anyway, really the demand for that electricity is further east. In the Madison, Minneapolis, Chicago area. And another point for building this, not only the CapEx 2020 line, which comes into Wisconsin, but the Badger Coulee line, which is going down to Madison, is to bring that renewable energy to where it's needed.
Well, over there, I mean, of course, North and South Dakota, you got these wide plains, and there's no obstruction to the winds that really come through there.
It's a very good resource, absolutely.
It's a perfect resource. And it's stunning when you're driving along and suddenly you begin to see all of these wind towers and great big 3-blade props up there that are going to, I mean, that's a stunning, but wow, what technology, how fantastic, how fantastic. How does, this is, out of the way question kind of, but does Europe, for example, and or other developing countries have this kind of an electrical web, if you will, this kind of energy web?
I believe some of the countries have very similar setups. In some of what we would consider less advanced, they're more centralized. Where we were 60, 70 years ago, where we had small generators that powered small areas. That generator went out without power until it was up and going.
Yeah, nope, that's exactly right. Well, yeah, that was kind of a foolish question because I know that we've been over there in Europe sometimes, and I know that there's feeds coming from Spain into France and so forth. But now to get down to some kind of interesting singular advances going on, and one of this is LED. You were talking about that, David and Craig, the LED lighting. Where does that come in?
Well, that's one of our projects that we're currently working on, something our members are going to be seeing.
You might explain that. The LED is...
LED is the light emitting diode. It's a type of lighting, and that fits well into our renewable energy, as we talk energy efficiency. LEDs really fit that. LED lighting has been out there and available to the public for a number of years. So why are we just looking at it? It's just come down in price to a point where it actually makes sense to start looking at installing these LED lights. They're still more expensive than your high pressure sodium yard lights that are out there. But there's some costs and benefits that come along with the LED lighting. One of those being energy efficiency, as I mentioned. Your typical incandescent light, about 20% of the energy used is actually used for light.
Really?
80% of that energy is given up in heat losses.
Wow.
It's like a little space heater.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Your
incredible.
LED is opposite of that. 80% of the energy used goes to lighting and 20%
All right.
heat.
So how do you present this, David, as a marketing?
Well, from Craig's perspective, we're looking at doing all the yard lights that we have out there. Vernon Electric owns a lot of yard lights that people have on their farms. They use them.
Really?
Yes, and
Okay.
they rent them from Vernon Electric, and we're responsible for the electricity that goes to them. We're responsible for the repair of them. If they ever go out, they just call us up and say, hey, our yard light went out, come fix it. And we go out there and fix it for no charge.
You will fix it or you will install it.
Right. And so yeah, what Vernon Electric is looking at doing now is, of course, we have an incentive to make those lights as efficient as possible, and the LEDs meet that criteria. But another big advantage of the LEDs is they last longer. So when we send a lineman out there with a bucket truck to repair that light, that, of course, costs a lot of money to do that. And the less we have to do that, the better it is for everybody in the co-op. So we are really looking at these LED lights, but even though they cost a little bit more, because there's going to be less maintenance, it really makes financial sense and energy sense to start installing these LED lights. But now from our members' perspective, putting them in their homes, putting them in their kitchens, the bathrooms, that's also very good for the co-op as well. You know, it's a win-win situation for the co-op and for the member. It lowers the member's electric bill, it lowers Vernon Electric's demand, and so we offer incentives for people to buy LED lights and install them in our homes. They just have to provide us a copy of their invoice, their receipt, and a little easy to fill out application, and they can get a rebate.
Wow. You know, I have to compliment Vernon Electric because I had a problem back when something with billing. You began going billing on computer too. This is something else that
Online, yeah.
I mean, you're really a aggressive. I don't like that word progressive. You're an aggressive, positive contributor here to making life easier for us. And you know, I was handled beautifully. I got lots of good explanations. But, you know, a long time ago, the telephone company used to provide the telephone, sell the telephone and that sort of thing, and which all of that's changed. Here we are now in the 21st century, 2015 to be exact, and Vernon Electric, for example, and I'm sure that many other companies are doing the same. Vernon, you're really getting into a business other than just furnishing energy. And how long have you been doing that?
Providing energy?
Yeah. No, not providing energy. I'm talking about providing services beyond providing just the energy. In other words, LED lights for barn, for et cetera, for yard lights, et cetera.
I would say we've been doing that since day one, because when Vernon Electric back in 1930, well, I think our first farm got hooked up in 1937. That's when the lines finally got constructed and the first person actually got hooked up. You know, then the co-op needed to start bringing in revenue to keep the co-op going, and you know, all these farms out there, the farmers were used to using kerosene lamps, and the wife inside, you know, not trying to get too political here, but back then, you know, there was a lot of laundry that needed to be done, and that required building a fire in the house and boiling water, and so people didn't use a lot of electricity back then, and so the co-op started getting into selling electric appliances and say, hey, are you sick of using that iron that you had to heat up in the fire? How'd you like to use an electric one? You just plug it in and go. Wouldn't it be nice to have a refrigerator to put that milk in so it didn't spoil overnight, or to be able to cook on an electric stove, or use an electric dryer to dry your clothes instead of hanging them out at the line, or having a well pump so you didn't have to go down to the local stream to get water, or pump water at a pump jack outside. So
this is a really interesting concept you bring up, because you know, I don't think a lot of people really understand that energy companies like Vernon Electric are real promoters of hardware, so to speak. I never even really thought about that. But of course, because you have a product to sell, but unless there's something to put that product to,
yeah, we don't sell electricity, we sell a service.
Yeah.
Yeah. We sell a nice lifestyle. Is really, if you want to live in luxury, you're going to need electricity to do that, and that's really what we're selling.
So we were talking with Craig Buros and David Maxwell of Vernon Electric here about what's happening with electricity and energy in our lives. And I think if you've been listening, you've seen or felt and heard about the evolution going from very primitive ways of getting energy to very high-tech ways of getting energy and into the renewable and the green energy. What's your challenge over the next, as you look ahead now to the next 10, 15 years, maybe even the next 5 years? Because again, as we said, it changes so often. What do you both look at in terms of challenges for yourselves?
Well, I'll start off with a near challenge that we're looking at is we're trying to figure out a way to cut the grass around our solar panels. That's the community solar project.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, this is by far, the most advanced way of cutting grass, and I cut a lot of grass, and I've even tried this myself, but it's been on a very singular basis. So, David, you might explain your new grass mowing technology here.
Well, yeah, so Vernon Electric wants to be green out there with our community solar project, and one challenge we had is we had a lot of this grass out there that needed to be cut all the time, and of course you gotta get a guy out there, you gotta run a gas mower, you use a lot of carbon resources out there, so we wanted to avoid that. So, and I'll have Craig kick in here a little bit because these sheep you're looking at belong to Craig. And you can see in the background there, the solar panels come down pretty close to the ground, and as the grass gets higher, they start shading the panels, and that's a problem. So, Craig, tell us a little bit about the sheep.
Yeah.
Now we had last fall. By fall, the weeds and stuff started coming up through the solar panels, and of course, it's not easy to mow underneath the panels.
No.
And we were trying to come up with ways that we could control those weeds. My kids had 5 sheep for a fair project.
Okay.
And after the fair, we thought, well, let's just give it a try and see how this works. And it actually worked out real well. We got a lot of PR for our
fantastic.
Our creative ways of controlling the weeds and grass and around the solar.
Yeah, what a great idea. How many sheep do you have?
They're just those 5.
5.
And in this summer, you'll see a lot more out there. There's probably going to be closer to 40 sheep out there this summer.
Oh my gosh.
We're working with a local farmer to bring his sheep out there, and it's another win-win situation. We get our grass cut, and he gets to feed his sheep.
There you go. Isn't that fantastic? Good for you. I mean, that was very practical application there.
It worked well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, so that's one of the challenges which you're meeting, and but let's look ahead here. We have you deal with legislators and with legislation at Vernon Electric, but of course, as you said, you're small, but still in all, here we are. We have to be represented in this area. Mm-hmm. What's happening with your legislative efforts in terms of getting done what you want done?
Yeah, right now the hot issue from our perspective is electric water heaters. Legislation was just passed just very recently, April 16th, requiring not just electric, all water heaters, both gas, oil, and electric, to meet very stringent efficiency criteria. And water heaters that were 80 gallons and larger had to become over 200% efficient.
Wow.
And so you ask yourself,
wow.
Bob.
Who was it that put that one together?
I can't say exactly who that was, but I do know it was legislation that was passed. And so, of course, a lot of people ask, well, how can a water heater be 200% efficient? How can anything be over 100% efficient? And basically what it comes down to is that your traditional electric water heater or gas water heater that you have down in the basement right now, if it's larger than 80 gallons, you won't be able to use that, or you won't be able to buy a new one anymore. The new water heaters now will have to be what they call heat pump water heaters. And heat pump water heaters are basically a water heater with an air conditioner on top. It's built right on top, and what that unit on top does is it's extracting heat from the surrounding air and then putting that heat into your water, just like an air conditioner extracts heat from your house and takes that heat outside.
There you go with the engineers again.
Right. But
keep changing stuff up.
The trouble with that is that, of course, it's going to make water heaters a lot more expensive. And for the water heaters that are smaller than 80 gallons, they have to have a lot more insulation, so they're going to be bigger. So if you have your water heater in a closet that was made just for that water heater, you might have to make that closet bigger. And of course, you're going to see costs go way up. So we're working on with legislators to kind of back off on that a little bit and allow at least the co-op to be able to control water heaters during peak hours. That is a very big program.
Exactly. I mean, I've got a little water heater in our barn, and another little water heater, and another little, used to be a chicken coop, but now it's you know, a carry-all, whatever. But so if that goes out, then what'll I do?
Well, if the place that you go to buy your water heater is out of the traditional water heaters, then the new ones that they're going to order are going to have to meet this new criteria. So yeah, you will have to do something very different and a lot more expensive next time you get a new water heater.
Okay, well, boy, keep working on the legislators on that one.
Okay.
Do you have another challenge? Or are you challenge-free now?
Well, you know, another big challenge, no, we're not challenge-free, absolutely not. There's always something that's coming down the line. And you're kind of getting back to what you said earlier, we do have this challenge of moving towards a more renewable, more green future. And so we're trying to move away from coal and carbon-based, you know, and gas too, even though gas is really cheap right now. We're trying to move away from those carbon-based resources and get to more renewable energy resources. And as I always tell everybody, there's no silver bullet to anything. Anything that you decide to do, whether it be gas, coal, nuclear, wind, solar, they all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses, and somehow we're going to have to find a mix of all these things in order to meet this future that's going to have less carbon output in it. And so as legislators try to make these decisions, of course, one side is this school doesn't want to see our electric bills go through the roof and become unaffordable, and then you got the other school that says, you know, we got to save the planet no matter what it costs, and somehow we have to meet in the middle.
Yeah, I kind of think the planet will take care of itself, but I mean, there are forces in the planet that make everything we've talked about very, very minute. But I'll tell you what, Craig and David, this has been really information pleasant to be talking with both of you and to get all of this good knowledge, get a better idea of how our homes are being fed and how people like yourselves and Vernon Electric, Dairyland, etc. Make life easier for us. Good luck to both of you, and let's hope that the energy keeps flowing, huh?
Yep, absolutely.
You bet.
Yep.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you
It's
so
been a
much,
pleasure.
Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. David Maxwell and Craig Buros from Vernon Electric, who have helped us today understand better how we get our energy and how we keep our homes and our barns and all of our businesses working. What a wonderful and service this is, and thank God for it. So we'll look forward next time we see you to listening to Russ Coldford, who is the Coon Valley Fire Chief, who had an occasion to visit Janie's and my farm with a fire that my grandson and I started, and we didn't keep it in tow. So I still can't get over them because we have these high ridges, and I couldn't believe it here. This fireman had this, I think it was a Kubota, went like straight up there, and boy, and heavy gear on, and how they're tramping around and all that is beyond me. But Russ will be with us then, and we look forward to seeing him and many other interesting people in our area. Take good care of yourselves, and God bless.